Hello guys, my name is Lars Stender. I'm a writer from Denmark who specializes in science fiction and fantasy stories. Today I'm here to read for you from my fantasy book Madigo and the Hounds. And I'll be reading here chapter 34. If you want to know more about my books and earlier works, you are just very welcome to follow my lead at the bottom of the screen and on my Twitch account. For the rest of the day, Madigo had to work on the building site in Bloodstone's outer courtyards, where Mortero's people were constructing new barracks for the extra Dracoids that were on the way. It was hard and dirty work, but Madigo was happy to get out of the fortress and the tense atmosphere that seemed to reign within it. The construction work was interesting also for some of the other students, and some of them teased Madigo when they caught sight of him amongst the construction workers. "Oh, so it seems you are learning to use your wand," they would call out scornfully, making an implicit reference to a magic wand when they saw him loosening the hard soil with a pickaxe. Or, "He just needs to build up his knowledge," another student sneered. "Yeah, it's like a big hole in the ground," guffawed the third. And they'd go on like that. But it was, in fact, a small minority of students who actually teased him. Most of those that came out to see Madigo work observed him with a kind of awe. Their gaze fell on his naked, sweaty torso, and they gasped when they saw these shiny purple red streaks from Hasrasal's poisonous tongue. Not until evening, after a warm bath and dinner, did Madigo get the chance to visit his friends in the infirmary. However, he stopped short when he saw that it was the poisoner Virulia who was in charge of the nursing and bandaging of wounds. "Don't give me that look, boy," she hissed when she caught sight of him at the door to the infirmary. "Just because I know everything there is to know about poisons and strange brews doesn't mean I'm incapable of making restorative ointments or elixirs that cure illnesses. Those two things are often more connected than people might think, and you would have known had you come to your classes." Madigo could feel his cheeks turn red, but said nothing. He was too tired to argue with Virulia, and furthermore, he had to admit to himself that she probably had a point. Jasper was already off the sick list and had left the infirmary, but both Casper and Helena were still there. Casper waved weakly when he saw Madigo approaching. Both his hands were bandaged. "Hi," Madigo said quietly, while trying to put on a smile, but it turned into a strained expression instead. "Hi," Casper replied. He was very pale beneath his bristly red hair. There was a short, awkward moment of silence when none of the boys knew what to say. "Mortero says you're going to be better soon," Madigo finally mumbled. "Yes, luckily the wounds aren't that deep," Casper said. Are they bad?" Casper responded by lifting his blanket so that Madigo could see his legs. Both his lower legs were completely bandaged. Madigo stooped somewhat when he heard the news, and seeing the bandages made him feel very uncomfortable. I'm really sorry," he said. "I should never have persuaded you to go with me into the crypt." "No, probably not," Casper answered quietly. But then he wrinkled his brows thoughtfully and added, "But Jasper and I could also just have said no." "I guess. But still." There was a long pause. "Has Mortero spoken with you?" Madigo finally asked. Casper nodded slowly, but avoided Madigo's gaze and remained silent. Madigo's mouth felt terribly dry, and that sense of shame that had seeped through his intestines the last few hours now seemed to intensify it all at once. I had better check up on Helena," he muttered. Casper nodded once again. "As far as I know, she's doing pretty badly," he said, and finally looked up at Madigo again. "Have you spoken with Jasper?" "Not yet." "Do you know where he is?" "I think he's up at the dorm." Madigo quietly thanked Casper and walked over to the other side of the infirmary where the women's section was. It was separated from the men's section by a large curtain that stretched across the room. "What are you going there for?" Virulia asked sharply. "To visit Helena." "I'll ask her if she wants to see you," the witch grumbled and disappeared behind the curtain through a slit that went down the middle. After a little while she came out again and nodded crossly as she held the curtain to her side for Madigo. Over in the corner to the right. Madigo edged his way past Verulia, from whom came an acute smell of herbs and alcohol and all sort of medicines. 6 girls and women were being treated in the infirmary at the moment. Madigo noticed that one of us was Magda, Pastor's wife. She lay in bed, complaining, and had a huge bandage wrapped around her head. Madigo reached Helena's bed and looked dejectedly at her. She, too, had a huge bandage wrapped around her head, and her eyes were almost completely closed. When she caught sight of Madigo, she sent him a strange and slightly confused look. It was as though she was probing him. "Hi, how are you doing?" Madigo asked, cringing at his own question. Anyone could see he wasn't doing well. But Helena surprised Madigo. Instead of answering the question, she quietly said, "So, you are my brother?" Madigo stared at his sister. It would seem so," he muttered. The corner of her lips turned up into a small, crooked smile, and she touched her bandage on the left side. "They said I will get scars, just like you. The scars that are left by the evil spirits never really heal properly." Madigo's mouth turned completely dry, and all at once he felt extremely ill at ease. So he had to sit down on the edge of Helen's bed. I'm so sorry, Helena. I feel like it's all my fault." "No, it's not," she said sorrowfully. "It was my own decision to follow you, remember? I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't." She closed her eyes and a shiver went through her body. She pulled her blanket up to her chin. "I couldn't." Madigo found Jasper sitting on his bed at the dorm. Jasper had not been physically harmed in Mortero's crypt, but Madigo noticed the haunted and tormented look he now had in his eyes. "Hi," Madigo said carefully. "Hi," answered Jasper with a low voice as he looked down. Madigo slowly walked closer to him. He wasn't entirely sure whether or not Jasper liked being in his presence. "How are you doing?" Jasper breathed deeply and nodded curtly. "Okay, I guess." He still wouldn't look at Madigo. "I'm sorry about what happened," Madigo said. Jasper didn't answer. He just sat there and stared down at his choppy hands. For a long time there was silence between the boys that floated like a cold cloud between them. Finally, Madigo let out a sigh and turned around to leave. "My father was a fisherman," Jasper blurted out of a sudden. Madigo already knew that. Jasper had told him about his family before. They lived in Tidefields, a small fishing town that lay several days' journey by foot from Westerfields. Jasper's father had died at sea, but Jasper had not been too keen on talking about it, and Madigo had not pressed. "The last day I saw him, the weather was beautiful," Jasper continued, and looked up at one of the dorm's narrow windows. The sun was shining, and my father and the other fishermen talked about how exceptionally calm the sea was. My mother and I had gone down to see my father off. Jasper had begun by telling his story very slowly, but now the words came practically tumbling out of his mouth. Just before he stepped on board, my dad went back to me and Mom, and I remember thinking that it was kind of odd. He usually didn't do that. He gave us both a big hug and kissed my mother and on her mouth. Jasper's eyes opened wide for a moment, and then he swallowed. "Then suddenly I saw them," he said with a hoarse voice. "Them?" "Yes. They died," Jasper said. "I saw all of them. My father, my uncles, who were also fishermen, their friends. They all died. They were floating in the water, just below the surface. Their eyes were open. They looked so sad." Jasper's voice faded for a brief moment, but returned with new strength. "I tried to say something, to warn my father not to sail out, but he just ruffled my hair and smiled at me. I guess he thought I was crazy." Jasper lowered his head and his voice faded into a mumble. "Later that day, the clouds came. They came sweeping across the ocean, faster than the seagulls could fly. The waves, the wind, The storm tore the roofs off of several of the village's houses. Only a few boats made it back home. The rest stayed out there. Jasper's eyes had grown wet with tears, and he sat fidgeting absent-mindedly with the sleeve of his frock. He had managed to loosen a few threads and was now in the midst of uncoiling the entire arm hole. I'm sorry to hear that, Madigo said after a while. Jasper just nodded curtly. After that day, the others in the village started acting weird whenever I was around. I think they thought I was responsible for what happened. I was almost happy when Matero came to get me. Madigo pricked up his ears. Matero came to get you? Jasper nodded once more. He had heard rumors about me. Madigo went closer so that he stood right next to Jasper's bed. Only now did Jasper look up and meet his gaze. Down in the crypt, I saw something again, he whispered. When that ghost grabbed hold of me. What did you see? Jasper's eyes turned glassy. Dead people everywhere. The earth was covered with them. And we were there too. You and me and Casper and Helena and everyone else. We were lying on top of them all. It stank, and his scholars were eating our corpses, and it was so dark everywhere, so dark and so quiet. Totally quiet.
Okay. So now we know he can either see the future or a ghost.
All ghosts, yes.
Or maybe just a possible future. That can also be. So what we know here is the little chubby guy, for the first time, open up about some really bad stuff.
Yeah.
And
his own powers.
And his own powers. And we now know that she's not angry with him, his sister.
Mm.
And because they didn't know...
But maybe angry at herself.
Yeah, but maybe.
Maybe.
Because if she wasn't going there, she wouldn't have known.
No.
So maybe not.
No.
We don't know that.
We don't. Not for sure.
So, let's go to something here.
Yeah.
I think we have something on Twitch.
Screen, yeah.
So let's see here. You guys are doing a good job. Lol. Now the challenge. Read with emotion. I know I can't do that. You're doing good.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, small chapters I tried to have my wife listen to. It was cool. Is it related? Now we need to ask what is related.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Maybe to you. This,
Yeah.
related to you.
To some extent, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
You know Matero?
There are elements in the story which resembles incidents that have taken place in my life. Yes.
Okay. So let's stop the chapter here.
Yeah.
Dum dum dum.